Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Ballroom Network. Remember to follow at Ballroom Network for all the great programming we have, Bears and otherwise, in the sports landscape throughout the week. Like, subscribe, tell a friend or two on YouTube. Hopefully you're watching live along with us, fellow bar flies. And remember, if you're listening to the audio-only versions, to like, subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your media. I am at the Real Evan Mac. Ross is at Ross Reed on all of the social media. And we got a lot to get to on the podcast today. We've been off for a while and just mostly bad Bears news, riding that 4-game losing streak. And the gauntlet continues against the Vikings after the just gut-wrenching Packers loss. So we'll dive into what to expect from Matt Eberflus for the rest of the season, because it doesn't look like he's going anywhere. We'll talk about Thomas Brown and impressions of him and the rest of the roster, Caleb Williams, everything Bears-centric for the first half of the show and perhaps more. Injuries and beyond that. NFL headlines as well, news, and we'll talk about college football a teensy bit as well. As we haven't talked about it much, but the 12-team playoff is coming, and that should be pretty great. And Heisman race, Bulls notes, NBA notes, whatever we can throw at you. Gladiator 2, if Ross is psyched for it, I'm sure he is. Rocking his Halloween shirt. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, and if you follow him on social media with the hair blown out there, looks like a young Giancarlo Esposito. You ruined my opener, Ross. The biggest hater of snow, biggest lover of pasta that I know, ladies and gentlemen, Ross Reed. Hello.
Yes. Hello. In my house, it's always Halloween. Shout out to the greatest slasher flick of all time, the original John Carpenter Halloween, which, despite the season, is always you can always fire that up.
Yeah, no question.
Shout out to Joe. Thanks for the nice words.
Yeah, thank you, Vizo Joe, and remember to chime in if you're watching on YouTube. Feel free to comment if we've missed any Bears notes, or if you're hot on the questions that surround the Bears right now. Is Matt Eberflus going to make it through the season? Certainly it looks like it, because the Bears don't fire coaches halfway or more through the season because they're soft. And look, and Aldo's joined us. How about that? Of course, our fearless leader. Let's dive into it, Ross. After the gut-wrenching loss that I mentioned to the Packers this past Sunday, that left me without feeling for some time, left me just standing outside alone with my thoughts. Bears sitting at 4-6. That was the fourth game they lost in a row. In many ways, of course, being worse than the Patriots loss that preceded that. Really bad. Very little chance to make the playoffs, let alone make noise in the division. Now they're going back-to-back divisional opponents. They got to play a very tough Vikings squad that's, I believe, right in a 4-game win streak this Sunday, and then the Lions on Thanksgiving, unfortunately drawing that, buzzsaw that is the Dan Campbell-led Lions team that looks like the class of the NFC. But in that Packers game, just to briefly touch on that, I want to forget it so badly, we saw a very poised Caleb Williams against the Packers, and, they came damn close to breaking the curse of the Packers winning for the last several years, 11 games in a row. Now they made it. And it's never one play with the Bears, certainly the headlines were the Bears having that field goal blocked by the Packers, whether it's illegal or not, yada, yada. You can't point to that as the lone reason the Bears lost. It was fitting when the defense gave up that huge play to Christian Watson and Jalen Jones slipped, and it was a huge 60-yard, 70-yard gain, whatever it was, to put them in prime position to score. And then Caleb Williams, the positives are there certainly under Thomas Brown, and just this new breath of confidence. And I love the swagger we saw from Caleb Williams making plays with his legs. He made those huge throws in the 2-minute drill, getting his team into a position to kick a field goal, the 3rd and long, converting it to 4th and not as long, and converting that, and then keeping the drive going. Shoulda, woulda, coulda with a play. Perhaps you run off to get better field position, make it maybe a 40-yard field goal, or even better when Caleb's rolling like that. Unfortunately, I feel like the headline is still that Matt Eberflus, and we're really comparing the two in Thomas Brown, the new offensive coordinator for the Bears, and Matt Eberflus, and how they are just polar opposites. And Thomas Brown saying the right things. People are already saying, like, 2025 coach for the Bears, Thomas Brown, head coach of the Bears, that is. And then Matt Eberflus looks like the light has left his eyes. And you saw the press conferences today. He just feels like a dead man walking. And because he's probably been in this position, because he has been in this position so many times before, and he probably thinks that in the back of his head that this is perhaps his last season as a coach of the Bears. Again, kudos to Thomas Brown, seeming to be a breath of fresh air for the offense. Caleb spreading the ball around. It was great. The Bears ran pretty effectively. It was pretty balanced, but the 4-game losing streak rolls on against the Vikings, as I mentioned, Ross. And, in your eyes regarding Eberflus, before we move on, what can he do to save his job? Obviously, the easy answer is wins, but what you thinking?
What can he do to save his job?
Yes.
Not a goddamn thing. I mean, I guess if he can run the table, he can save his job, right? But I mean,
that's it. That's
gonna be right. That's not gonna happen. I mean, he's done. He's as good as done. You can see it in his press conferences, day after day now, week after week. I mean, he just looks like a guy that's defeated. I mean, long gone are the off-season tweets and media propaganda of the beard and the hair and all that stuff. And now he just sits up there on the stand, or I call it stand, on the podium. He just looks completely defeated. I mean, this guy's done. The only saving grace for himself right now is that the Chicago Bears as a franchise don't fire coaches midseason. That's just not their MO, or else I think he would have been fired probably after the Cardinals game, certainly after the Patriots game. But he's done. I think he'll be one of the coaches on, they call it Black Monday, on the Monday after week 18 this year, that would get one of the axes. And the good thing right now is a guy like Ryan Poles as a general manager knows Eberflus is done and is probably starting to do his legwork a little bit behind the scenes of trying to narrow down which head coach candidates he wants to bring in. And then, of course, he's going to have to work with President Kevin Warren, and then most importantly, ownership, to see how much they're willing to open up the pocketbooks for this next head coach. And I think that's going to be the biggest dilemma going forward for this team is George McCaskey and ownership willing to pay Eberflus what he has left on his deal. There's been speculation that it might be 2 years left, it might be 3 years left, whatever it is, you still have to pay him. It could be in the ballpark of around $15 million, and bring in a new head coach. Let's say you want Ben Johnson as your next head coach. Well, then hypothetically, you're going to have to pay Ben Johnson. The rumor last year was $15 million. I don't buy that. But you look at McDonald, the coach right now for the Seahawks, first-time head coach. He got $10 million this year from the Seahawks to be a first-year head coach. So I think Ben Johnson could be in that $11 to $12 million range. And do the Bears want to pay that? But as far as Eberflus, he's done. He's toast. There's nothing that he can do to save his job. I think at this point, he has to save face around the league and see if he can even get a defensive coordinator job next year, because he might be coaching linebackers somewhere. That might be as big a fall of grace for him.
There are a few people out there, a few NFL talking heads that you see on ESPN or CBS or wherever, that say he is still a very highly respected coach. To that end, a defensive coordinator would be the best case scenario. It's that type of Matt Nagy situation where you get this shot and then maybe you go to a competitor, whether it be within Indianapolis Colts, like AFC South division, or maybe the NFC North sees something if there's an opening, a vacancy. But Aldo asked, can Flus last the season? Yes, he's going to last the season. And like we talked about, the only thing that could possibly save his job is to rattle off some wins and cause some chaos in the NFC North. And you're not going to catch really any of these teams, frankly, at this point, because of this tough competition. Minnesota is kind of your best chance to get out of this funk when you kind of throw away records in divisional games like this. I think they have a pretty good shot if they can rely on Caleb Williams having that confidence that he did this past Sunday against the Packers. And with Matt Eberflus, it's like you talked about, Ross, up on the podium, he just looks like a guy who is just going through the motions. He's certainly, he feels for the scapegoat that was Shane Waldron. But at this point in time, your legacy is pretty cemented. And it's that cycle of new GM missing out on their quarterback, drafting their quarterback, or picking their head coach, and the cycle just kind of continues for the Bears in this circle where it just leads to mediocrity in the NFC and within the league in itself. So at this point, what you're playing for Sunday is to win and to get a lot of experience for Caleb Williams and to play his best when he's playing these divisional opponents that are all looking heads and shoulders, above the Bears at this point. Circling to or pivoting to Caleb Williams, he played so great against that Packers team to have a drive like that where we've seen them come up short, and he took back-to-back sacks, and then you're like, fuck it, let's tune out, let's be done with this. To overcome that and then make those huge throws that he made, we don't see that from vets, let alone rookies. So it was really impressive to see that. You don't want to put him in a position like that, like, oh, all of a sudden we got to turn it on, because he looked good at spreading it around, made more plays with his feet than he did with his arm. Really, it was DeAndre Swift, big run play, and then the Roshan Johnson play to get them the majority of their scoring points. And so now against the Vikings, what Caleb Williams are we going to see, and how does that translate to what Thomas Brown has brought to the team, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb was very impressive on Sunday. He looked like the veteran quarterback of the two guys out there between him and Jordan Love. Jordan Love threw, again, another horrific red zone pick that kept the Bears in the game. Jordan Love also was not able to convert on a fourth down play when I thought Matt LaFleur should have took the points at the end of the game there when they were only down 5, and they could have cut it to a 2-point game to hopefully get the ball back from the Bears. But, Caleb Williams continues to play within the guardrails, kind of like the bumper rails that you have when you go to you take your toddler to the bowling alley, and he doesn't make the mistakes. He has not turned the ball over in the last couple of games, which is good. But on the flip side, I kind of want him to push the ball a little bit. I want him to take him some chances. There's a 4-6 football team right now, and I want him to kind of throw some 50-50 balls to guys like Roman Dunze and Cole Kmet and DJ Moore. But you couldn't ask for anything better from what he was playing on Sunday. I did think that the first sack on that last drive was on him. But that's what he's going to do. He's going to hold on to the ball. He's going to stay in the pocket. He's looking for somebody to get open. It's on his offensive coordinator and his wide receivers to get open. And then he started to kind of freelance a little bit. He made 3 outstanding throws to get them in position for what should have been their 5th win of the game. And again, this goes back to the head coach who just made another massive blunder. It's like we feel like we've been saying this over and over again this season. He continues to let the ball run when you could have kind of, ran another play or two to get a little bit closer. He blamed it on, he thought he was worried about, somebody fumbling the football or bad snap or something like that. Those odds are even lower than them missing the kick or having the kick blocked. So the probability was very low for that. We heard Cairo Santos this week say that he likes the football on the right hash when he's kicking field goals. Matt Eberflus did not get the football there. That is on coaching again. I don't know if that's on Richard Hightower to convey that to Eberflus. But also Eberflus should know that. You're the head coach of this team. You know what your kicker likes to do. So, it was upsetting that Caleb was not able to come away with that with the win. It was upsetting to see Caleb Williams start his Packers career at 0-1. The Bears have now lost 11 straight to the Packers, which is just completely absurd. But either way, you still are excited for his growth. Now, here comes another big test this weekend. You've got a Brian Flores defense who loves to get after you, loves to heat up the pressure. He likes to send the blitzes at you. It's going to be on Caleb to process fast, to get the ball out quickly. Good thing for him this year. His numbers have been outstanding against the blitz all season. And it's going to be a great test for Thomas Brown. And I think that's the key name that we have to go to going forward. I know it's been a lot of fodder and talk this year about, or not this year, maybe this week, about Thomas Brown. Is he, auditioning for now the Bears head coaching job, a head coaching job around the league? I think we should pump the brakes a little bit on that. I think this guy has not even called plays for a full season in his career. But he's still right now on a massive audition to prove to not only the Chicago Bears, but teams around the league that he could be a very good offensive coordinator. If you can take a guy like Caleb Williams for the back half of the season and you put up points and develop him and win a couple ball games, then all of a sudden, if you're the Bears, you've got to take a zoom back. And Cliff already kind of alluded to it. You have to say, do we even need to hire an offensive coach as our next guy? Do we want Brian Flores as our next head coach and just retain Thomas Brown? Mike Vrabel is still out there, right? Do you want a guy like Mike Vrabel and just still retain Thomas Brown? So there's a lot of still up in the air revolving this. The best case scenario at this point is both Brown and Williams develop a kinship to each other and can push this offense a little bit to the next level. At this point, I could care less what happens on defense. In fact, I kind of hope the defense bottoms out a little bit because that's more of an indictment on Matt Eberflus. I just want to see Caleb Williams put up some points and put up some touchdowns. He has not had a touchdown now, and I think 3 or 4 football games. The Bears are 31st in the league in touchdown passes. They're 30th in the league right now in passing yards. It's time to you have a Ferrari that's been sitting in your garage for half a season now. Let's get him on the expressway. Let's rev him up a little bit, and let's see what this kid can do, and let's push the limits a little bit.
Yeah, as much as the knock is on Caleb making those sort of rookie mistakes where, Brady and Kevin Burkhardt were talking about it at length on Sunday against the Packers, that he was getting the ball out a lot quicker. And then again, the negative, extending the play far too long. He, was second to, if DeAndre Swift doesn't have that big run, he's leading the Bears in rushing yards. Right. To get that's building confidence, that's opening up the playbook, that is helping your team get down the field. And that's what we really didn't see a lot of earlier in the season, whether it be coaching or whether Caleb Williams just wasn't comfortable running it. And you saw that fire from him. And I agree, Ross, in what you said about the offense and Thomas Brown. Take those shots because, Caleb has an arm and, he has the receivers to throw to. Roman Odunze had a much better game than he has in weeks now. At this point, we saw a good dose of Keenan Allen. We still haven't seen, we saw DJ Moore get involved a lot more with sweeps, running the ball, and Cole Kmet as well. So you're seeing that accompaniment of all these weapons that Caleb Williams has. He should be getting used to spreading it around at this point. And as far as this, matchup against the Vikings, they're top 3 in the league in sacks, and they're in tops of the league in forcing turnovers as well. So this is, arguably an even more tough test for Caleb regarding this defense versus the Packers defense. And, you talked about the defense, Ross, and they're really hurting right now, trying out safeties at this point. I mean, Jaquan Brisker on IR and Andrew Billings, that's really tough blow for an already ailing defense. Montez Sweat hasn't been able to get after the quarterback. He's got 3.5 sacks. He can't seem to stay healthy. When you're paying him whatever it is, $100 million to rush the quarterback. And the rest of this line, they can't sniff the quarterback. Jordan Love, besides that one interception in the red zone, I mean, the Bears have played these great quarterbacks pretty well as a unit, but they just can't seem to rush the quarterback as well. And that certainly, starts with the coaching and then the personnel you put out on the field there. DeMarcus Walker has had some moments, but if that's your number 2 edge rusher, it's just looking pretty bleak for that unit. And there's just no creativity as far as blitz packages that we wanted to see or anything like that. You would think that would change against Sam Darnold, and that's going to be a key to try and win. But with the Bears, obviously, I feel like any sort of hope that they would be winning this latter half, like this tougher schedule that they have, has gone out the window with that Packers loss. Just loss after close loss has been really just frustrating. But the bright spot is certainly in that offense and Thomas Brown. And if he does continue to develop Caleb Williams in a great way, why wouldn't he potentially throw his hat in the ring to be head coach of the Bears in 2025?
Yeah, I completely agree. And you talked about the defense and their lack of productivity and rushing the passer. Right now, Gervon Dexter is actually leading the team right now in sacks. He's got 4 sacks in the season, and he's got 14 quarterback hits on the season. He's been very good. The Billings loss up the middle really hurt them. I think you saw it last week as Aaron Jones was able to gash. I'm sorry, Josh Jacobs was able to gash them up the middle in the running game. That's what concerns me the most this week, because you have Aaron Jones coming into town on Sunday, and best believe KOC is going to be able to look at that in the film and say, without Billingsley, that big body in the middle, they're going to be able to rush on them. The Bears need a nose tackle in the draft this year. They need a couple offensive linemen. They need to work in the trenches in the draft this year. But you'd like to see them heat up the pressure a little bit on a guy like on Sam Darnold this Sunday, and that's what they didn't do last week. And again, another indictment on Matt Eberflus. He only called 3 blitzes against Jordan Love. Jordan Love is in the bottom third in the NFL right now against the blitz, and you don't heat him up. That is a problem for me. You got a guy like Kyler Gordon out there who's an outstanding blitzer. You got linebackers who can do it. You got, even though Brisker's out, guys like Jonathan Owens have speed. Hicks have speed. You should have been able to heat up the pressure on them. So I expect more pressure to come this week from Matt Eberflus against Sam Darnold. Don't do that against Jared Goff on Thursday. He's going to smoke your ass. But do it this week against Sam Darnold and force him to make a decision quicker than normal, especially when you've got a guy like Justin Jefferson on the field who you're going to have to double team if you want to find some success against him. So, my biggest issue with the Bears this year, in addition to everything, is they just have not able to play a complete game this year. You look at their expected points, and whether the offense will have a positive expected points like they did last week against the Packers, then defense and special teams where, defense was negative 13.6, special teams negative 2.7. The week before that, negatives across the board, right? The week before that and the week before that, negatives across the board. There's only one game this year that they've had positive expected points in all 3 phases. It's not the Jaguars game like you would think. It's actually the Rams game. The Jaguars game was pretty close. They had some special teams blunders that cost them there. So, again, they have not played one complete game this season. It'd be nice to see that potentially this Sunday, where you could just kind of say the offense is humming, the defense is humming, the special teams is humming, right? Torrey Taylor has been a little iffy the last couple of weeks too. Let's get all 3 phases back. To me, that goes right on coaching. On Aldo's point there, I'm a Joe Brady fan. I know Ben Johnson. Everybody thinks Ben Johnson. This is a Ben Johnson or bust race, but I think the Bears will speak to Joe Brady. I also think they'll speak to Liam Cohen, who ironically, he's the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. And ironically, they had a chance to hire him in the offseason as their off-camp offensive coordinator, and they passed on him in favor of Shane Waldron. So, but yeah, all 3 phases would be nice to see that. Run the football, allow Caleb to play fast, get out on the edge, blitz Sam Darnold, and then let's play clean in fundamental football and special teams.
Yeah, you talked about complete games, and the only complete games that the Bears played were against the losers of the league in Jacksonville and the Panthers, and everybody's beaten up on those 2-win teams at this point. But, coaching will certainly seem to wait till the offseason. Right now, what you got to work on, as you talked about, Ross, is playing the most complete game possible and putting your team in the best position to win. And if you're Matt Eberflus and Thomas Brown and company, you really don't have a ton to lose at this point, especially when you're playing the Vikings and Lions back to back. These are huge opponents that are, already mostly clinching their playoff spots at this point, I feel like, and really the class of the NFC up there with the Eagles and just really offensive firepower to boot and defensive to boot as well. So, the Bears certainly got to get healthy. I feel like with the line at this point, we saw a lot in the chat about Bears needing to build in the trenches and piggybacking off of the defensive line and a need for a pass rush. That need is there too. I think Ryan Bates, it's hard to get him to stay healthy, or it's tough breaks for him to not stay healthy when he's in concussion protocol. He looks questionable for this Sunday's game. Tevin Jenkins is Darnell Wright. I should say Darnell Wright has been the lone healthy offensive linemen who played pretty much this entire season. And then Tevin Jenkins questionable for Sunday. With the line, I think we saw some positive things as far as guys who have plugged in there and really picked up the slack in both the run and the pass game. But you don't want to see that. Just want to see some continuity, especially for Caleb Williams, and hopefully we see some Sunday. And are we going to see it, Ross?
I think so. I think, last Sunday, I liked what Thomas Brown did with the concepts. I liked him be able to get guys on the edge. I thought that was Braxton Jones' best game of the season. I thought he was outstanding. He really stood out, obviously, on that block that was able to spring DeAndre Swift, took for a touchdown. Darnell Wright played well. He held up well in pass protection. They're going to get Tevin Jenkins back this week. They've got Bates out there. So I think this week will be probably their best 5 guys that you've seen this season on the offensive line. But again, you're going to need it because you've got a guy in Brian Flores who's going to bring the pressure. He's going to bring the heat around you. I think at this point, too, you're just trying to figure out who's going to be a part of your starting 5 up on that group next year. I think you're still going to have Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. I think those 2 guys will still be your bookends. It's really hard to select, offensive tackles at the top of the draft, especially where the Bears are going to pick at, because they're not going to be at the very top. I know a lot of people like Will Campbell out of LSU, but I actually think he projects more to be a guard. And so I do think the Bears are going to focus more on who's going to be on this team and their interior offensive line next year. It's a big last few games for Tevin Jenkins. I love the talent, and I love how he plays when he's out there. He just can't stay healthy, and he's a guy that needs new money, and I just don't know if you want to commit and pay for a guy that just cannot stay in the field day in, week in, week out. So they might be looking for potentially 2 to 3 starters on the interior line. I feel pretty good about the tackles coming back next year, unless something miraculous happens and there is a top 10 offensive tackle, specifically obviously a left tackle that they would take. But I think Braxton Jones, in a good scheme and with good coaching, is actually a more than serviceable left tackle. I think he's an above average left tackle. And I think he's going to continue to show that throughout the season like he did last week.
Yeah, he has been playing well. And, no more Nate Davises would be great to see at this point.
He got released, so he's gone.
Exactly. I'm saying, yeah. And you pointed to Tevin Jenkins and guys who are trying to get paid and be on this roster next year. The first thing you got to do is play, man. And Nate Davis did not do that. And Visor Joe pointed out that DeAndre Swift, another injury note, being questionable with the groin injury, and I don't think he was a participant at practice today. That's a little concerning. He's been a pretty big burst. That's what we've wanted to see all season, and we did see it a bit Sunday too with the Thunder and Lightning, as it were. It's certainly no Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, but it's our own version of it here in Chicago of Roschon Johnson at the goal line, and then DeAndre Swift just having those big plays for the offense as well. You need a healthy accompaniment for Caleb Williams, but it starts and ends with Caleb Williams as far as them beating the Vikings on Sunday, and it's a third home game that they'll have in a row. They don't want to lose a 5th game in a row. Certainly nobody does in that position. And I'm curious to see which Caleb Williams we get. I think you will see a decent amount of him running the ball. I think we'd like to see that trend of him getting the ball out of his hands more quickly, whether it be 2 seconds, like that half a second difference is so huge. And we saw it against the Packers. It was a difference maker, and don't play scared, right? Take those shots downfield, build some confidence for this young man. Because now all this conversation is like Drake May should have been drafted before him, or Jaden Daniels. Like, shut those haters up, Caleb. Let's see you ball out Sunday and get a win in the division, your first win in the division for the year and in your career.
Absolutely. 2 things that you can help him out against this, fast, feisty,
2 big things.
Blitz heavy defense from the Vikings. Get Caleb more on the edge. Get him on the edge. Allow him to be able to make the play, and allow your wide receivers to move out on the edge with him. We saw that last week a little bit. Guys like Roman Dunze, guys like DJ Moore were able to roll out with him and in motion and get some quick passes and allow those guys to run down the field. And then Caleb Williams, even going back to college, back at USC in Oklahoma, very good in zone read. So use that more. That's the one way that you can keep a defense on their heels. He is excellent at that. We saw it last week against the Packers. He knew when to keep the football, run it. He knew when to hand it off to DeAndre Swift. Allow him to utilize that more this week. And then I would throw in there zone read and mix it with the zone read with some of the passing plays where he's able to even pull it and pass it quickly. Now you have to trust your offensive lineman to not get that 2 yards down the field and get called for, illegal alignment down the field. But you have to practice that during the week. So it goes back to coaching. But those are two things to me I think that I would love to see more from Thomas Brown this week to really slow down this Vikings defense and just overall play with some pride. I mean, you hit it on the head. This is a home game. They've had a few home games in a row. They had a great record at home dating back to the last few years, but now they lost a couple in a row. This is a division game at home. Usually a division underdog at home tends to cover, sometimes even win if you're on the gambling side of things. This is also their last home game until December 22nd. That's damn near a month until they come back home right before Christmas. So you want to see if you can get one in front of the home crowd before you go back on the road for some really tough football games coming up.
No question, as you see at the bottom of your screen, Minnesota favored by 3.5 points, and it's a noon kickoff. It's we talked about it being snowy here in Chicago. It'll be a cold, brisk day, but hopefully clear skies, and hopefully that's not a factor, any sort of precipitation. And we'll see which Bears team shows up and if they can break the losing streak at this point. And also the final note on the Packers-Bears games, Devin Hester deserved better. You're honoring his ridiculousness at halftime. What a bummer. Just couldn't finish it out in the first half or the second half, I should say.
You're a guy that got into the Hall of Fame for special teams, and your special teams at the end of the game lost you the play. It lost you the play. That's just
very apropos.
Yeah, absolutely.
No question.
Bring Dave Toe back. Bring the Tober back.
Bring Dave Toe back and bring Lovie Smith back. Now we're as breaking news: Shohei Ohtani winning MVP and Aaron Judge. That was, a foreseen conclusion, I think. But NFL news, we finally see, as we're switching gears, that the Chiefs lost to the Bills, so their streak is done at 9. And I like that the remainder of the Dolphins team that went undefeated in, 72, that they were having cocktails and still the only undefeated Super Bowl champion.
Warm milk now. It's like warm milk now for them.
Yeah, no cocktails for them or mocktails, as it were. Chargers and Texans starting to roll. Is Denver good? Bo Nix and that defense certainly say so. There's the juggernauts of the NFC. We talked about the Lions at the top of the league. They just thrashed the Jaguars. What was it, 52-7, whatever it was. They're the new favorites to win the Super Bowl. The Minnesota Vikings are no slouch. The Eagles, as much as we talk about Nick Sirianni being a problem, signing Saquon can offset that and take the attention away from Nick Sirianni. And maybe the play of the year, that reverse hurdle, which was just bananas, taking the pressure off Jalen Hurts and Sirianni. Vikings and Darnold coming in Soldier Field Sunday. You're seeing those contenders and pretenders separated. Another AFC team that certainly looks like the class of the AFC is the Steelers, and it was an ugly game as far as not a lot of points. It was all the points scored by kickers, but Pittsburgh getting the win over Baltimore was huge, and that led to a lot of the old criticisms coming to light again of Lamar Jackson in the big stage, whether it be Mahomes or Josh Allen or the Steelers are like his kryptonite at this point, so that doesn't bode well for them. But the Texans again peaking at the right time, the Chargers peaking at the right time. All of a sudden, the AFC West, some guys are looking all right. The Broncos sneak in as like a 7 seed. They're a pretty dangerous 7 seed. The way Bo Nix is playing and the way that defense has been playing as a whole. And the NFC South is kind of still up for grabs, even though Atlanta has a little bit of a lead in that division. And then the NFC West, that's certainly up for grabs with 3 teams at 500 and Arizona at 6-4. Arizona would be a 3 seed right now, which is just bananas the way they are playing. Thoughts on the NFC and AFC as we're in week 12? We're going into week 12 here.
Week 12, a lot of bye teams this week. Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Saints, Jets, Jaguars. All on a bye week this week.
If you're a fantasy fan.
Yeah, so it's rough. And I think the matchups are pretty shitty this week too. You got like
Starting with tonight.
Steelers Browns tonight. You get to see
Yeah.
Jameis Winston after he's throwing for a bunch of interceptions against that crazy defense. The Lions are probably going to drub the Colts this week, right? As against Anthony Richardson. Patriots Dolphins is kind of a snoozer. The games I'm looking at for this week, I think they're all the late games. The 49ers Packers game is super intriguing because we don't know what's going on with Brock Purdy. He's popped up on injury report this week. So you might get Brandon Allen starting against the Packers this week in Green Bay. That's pretty scary as the 49ers really need a win here. They're 5-5 and feels like this season is slipping away a little bit. But the 2 games of the week for me the 3 games of the week are the last 3 games of the week. Cardinals Seahawks. Cardinals got to go to Seattle. That'll be a fun football game. Eagles Rams. Eagles are going to LA. That'll also be a fun football game. And then the Monday night game is Ravens Chargers. I think that's the one that's like that could be kind of like one of those old school, just in a phone booth, 2 teams beating the shit out of each other to kind of football games. I mean, shout out Derrick Henry, who is bolstering his Hall of Fame career right now. He's going to finish. He's going to have over 1,200 yards on the ground by the end of that game. Lamar Jackson has been awesome. 25 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. Of course, in Eagles Rams, Saquon Barkley, who had that crazy jump, backwards thingy majiggy that he did, was awesome. And I think the Eagles right now, yeah, absolutely. I think that for me right now, obviously the Lions, I think, are the number 1 team in the NFL, not just the NFC, but the NFL. And this is as a number 1 Nick Sirianni haters, I think he's a fucking moron. But I think the Eagles are really coming on. They're coming on strong right now. They look good. They're starting to get their rhythm going. They're using Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts is starting to get a little bit better in the passing game. Their defense, boy, Jalen Carter is really starting to look like a special defensive tackle. And that's a really scary football team. On the AFC side of things, pick your poison between the Chiefs, the Bills, and like the Ravens, right? Those three teams who are led by 3 MVP candidates. We'll see who's standing. And for me, it's going to be who is going to be the healthiest of those 3 teams. For me, I think Josh Allen right now is the MVP in the league. I think for the weapons he has and what he's been able to do this year, he's the MVP for me, what they were able to do to Kansas City last week. But, we've seen Lamar Jackson here before, and we've seen him win a couple MVPs now. He can go out there against the Chargers this Monday night and throw for 3 touchdowns, run for a touchdown. Nobody will not believe that, and then retake that MVP lead. So it's been fun to watch the quarterback play to me in the AFC, especially. I haven't even talked about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is having just a monster season of he's going to be on track to have over 4,000 passing yards and
leading the league in yards now.
Yeah, over 40 touchdowns. And this guy can't even get a win for his team. It's heartbreaking for him. Zach Taylor's the guy that's probably going to get fired himself just because they can't get that team rolling. They're 4-7 right now. So the quarterback play has been awesome in the AFC. In the NFC, it's been really good team play, but it's very top heavy for me. I think it's Eagles versus Lions, and then the rest of the group is just a bunch of pretenders.
Could be. Certainly, we'll see if the South can make some noise. Tampa Bay coming off a bye and getting Mike Evans back. If they can sort of go on a run, they get a Cupcake Giants game now that they've benched Daniel Jones and seem to be embracing the tank. Those bad teams are absolutely bad. When you talk about Daniel Jones being benched in favor of Tommy DeVito at this point, getting the nod, the jersey's own, and the Panthers stay bad, Jaguars stay terrible, the Raiders, all these teams kind of vying for Travis Hunter, Shadur, Sanders looking ahead. But, as far as those winners go, and you talked about Derrick Henry and how great he has played in a Ravens uniform and with a new team. And I feel like he should be getting some MVP conversation with Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen and Saquon Barkley. You're throwing Saquon Barkley out there, put Derrick Henry in there as well, because at his age, it's really impressive to see. But I agree with you. Those games are going to be fun to watch. I think typically the Sunday nighter has some fireworks for sure, but that Monday nighter could certainly be great with the Ravens and the Chargers, both quarterbacks playing really well right now. The Rams, talking about the NFC West is just being up for grabs, and Matt Stafford is a quarterback who has been playing really well as of late, and he gets his accompaniment of receivers back and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And there's no telling what he can do at home against this Eagles team. Might be able to derail them, who are 4-1 at this point. But Cardinal Seahawks, it's really, coming down to the wire with these last several games to see how the seeding will shake out at this point.
Yeah, this is basically like the last week of like, if you are a wannabe playoff team, I think this is the time where you've got to start to kick it in the higher gear a little bit and start to win some football games. And obviously we've got the NFL introduced the extra playoff team a couple years ago. So now we're talking, teams like the Broncos are going to sneak in and stuff like that. But you definitely want to be at least one of those top 3 playoff seeds, in my opinion, to be a serious contender. And in the NFC, we got 2 strong ones, 3 through 6 or 7, whatever it is up for grabs. But the AFC is just complete. Everybody's just log jammed together. You still feel pretty good that the Chiefs are probably going to finish with 14 wins or something like that. But you got the Bills and the Ravens and the Chargers and all these other teams just jam packed together. It's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be fun to see. If you're just a fan of the league in general. I know we're all Bears fans here and we all pay attention to the Bears. But if you're a guy like me who just flips on Red Zone all the time and watches some of these other games, you're gonna see a lot of fun. And I hope that we start to see some more offense start to open up now that we're a little bit past the halfway point through the season. It's been popping up a little bit, but let's see some guys kind of kicking in the high gear a little bit, and hopefully also for the sake of the brand and sport, we see our superstars stay healthy.
Yeah, no question. It was miring the sport in the first half of the season. We saw Christian McCaffrey not there. We saw Cooper Kupp not be there, and just a bunch of big names sort of robbing us of the full potential that was out there. But now, in the second half, with a lot of these divisional games coming up for all these teams, it's going to be making for exciting football with the Sunday slate. It's setting up for Thanksgiving and beyond with a lot of great games coming up.
Yeah, except for Thanksgiving, we get Cooper Rush versus Danny DeVito. So
true, yes, baby.
make sure you are well liquored up on Thanksgiving by the time those two tee off, because you do not want to see.
Yeah, because the Cowboys always play. So luckily, you get hopefully a little more competitive matchup. But I mean, the way the Lions have been playing, it could not be very close against the Lions and the Bears.
Yeah, you don't want to see at 3:30. Your grandma's definitely going to fall asleep during New York during Giants versus Cowboys. Luckily, the night game though, we get a little bit more fun. You get Miami going to Green Bay. That should be a little bit of a track meet. Tyreek Hill in Green Bay should be fun.
Post tryptophan nap, just rally and keep crack another bottle, man. There you go. You've been watching college football, Ross. At this point, we're getting down to the wire. The newly expanded playoff, getting to 12 teams from 4 to 12, and in the Big Ten, it's really getting a lot of the headlines. I feel like, in my opinion, if you told me Indiana would be undefeated and towards the top of the conference, I would have, at the beginning of the season, I would have laughed in your face. Despite their record, I'm sure Ohio State is going to take it to them this Saturday. And then, speaking to the Big Ten, I forgot that Oregon had moved to the Big Ten, which makes so much sense, as we know. They're number 1 seed if the college football playoff started today. I've seen a little bit of, the SEC action in Texas and Georgia. Alabama would be like a 7 seed, and they're kind of creeping around. Like I said, Indiana would be in that top 5 conversation. Boise State kind of spicy. Ashton Genty with his Heisman candidate type of season, Heisman caliber season, has been really cool to watch as a running back in that conversation. Notre Dame, soft as baby shit schedule, still going to make the playoff, I'm sure. And then Bama, Tennessee, and Miami, all like impressive higher seeds, and they may threaten those top dogs. Are you getting more interested in the college football as we're winding down the regular season here?
Definitely. It's fun to see. I like the expansion, especially this year, because I don't think that there's one team that is dominant over the other team. Obviously, Oregon is the number 1 team right now in the nation. They're 11-0, but it wouldn't surprise me if a team like Texas or Ohio State was able to beat them. Or even if you think a team near the bottom, like listen, if Georgia can get better quarterback play, I actually think that they're one of the best teams in the nation. But Beck has been so up and down this year that's really hurt them. But if he can play better, same thing with Tennessee in this situation. There's some teams you talked about in the NSC and SEC. They're a little bit feisty. Even a Milton, Milton for Alabama, they're seventh overall. So it's going to be fun. This Saturday, we get a big matchup. You hit it on the head. Indiana versus Ohio State. When's the last time you can ever say that Indiana versus Ohio State was a big matchup in terms of college football championship rankings and stuff like that? I think I can feel like I can name Antoine Randall L. and the Bears former player Adewale Ogunye. Those are the guys I feel like I can name that went to Indiana University off the top of my head. I'm trying to think. Trent Green, I think, went there, quarterback. Otherwise, Indiana has not churned out a lot of NFL players. So that'll be fun. I think a lot of people are leaning towards Ohio State. But how much fun would it be if Indiana actually shocked the world and continued this unbeaten season going on? And so it feels like there's a lot of parity this year in college football. Especially with the expansion up to 12. You've got even some other teams lingering. BYU's hanging in there. They're 9-1 right now. SMU is also 9-1. But, it's going to be fun to see. I like the big dogs being in there, seeing at the top Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame. Those are just classic teams, classic logos, classic uniforms, and a lot of alumni fan bases that travel well. And that should bode well as we start to kind of hunker down in the winter and watch good old fun college football at home.
Yeah, buddy. Instead of just a lot of meaningless bowl games, I mean, that still are fairly competitive with the Sugar Bowl and the PlayStation Bowl and the KFC Bowl. But now adding these 8 teams, it adds that element of, March Madness or other expanded playoffs where it could be a Cinderella story in there for sure. Jordan Howard went to IU too. That just came to me.
That's right.
There
Sure
you go. Former Bear, had a decent couple of years with Chicago.
Yeah, and from the sake of the NFL, you don't know. There's no consensus number 1 overall pick right now. There's no guy that you feel like could go first overall. Is it Shedeur Sanders? Is it Cam Ward? Is it Travis Hunter? Travis Hunter said today he's for sure going to be in the NFL draft. No shit. Is a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle for Texas. So the good thing is all of these young men are all on these teams vying for the playoff spot. So we get to see who is going to separate themselves from everybody else and, help their team potentially move on in the playoffs and then also secure themselves a top 10, top 5 first overall pick right now. As it stands today, I believe it's the Giants that would be drafting first overall, and obviously we see what they're doing with Daniel Jones. Are they taking for Shedeur Sanders? Should he be the first overall pick? Those things are still out there, or can Cam Ward make a jump and overtake him? Those are going to be really fun to see as well down the stretch.
Yeah, no question. I certainly always think that the class of college football is one of these SEC teams, and the way Texas has played, they look like maybe that Texas is back and they can overtake, a Georgia or an Alabama at this point. Alabama's still sneaky good, perhaps, and maybe 7 seeds right where they want to be. But the Big Ten coming hard. The big news today: Michigan landing, the top overall recruit in high school. So they're looking towards next year and beyond. But Ohio State always in that conversation. I mean, Indiana, IU is a good story. Penn State kind of also in that conversation, but Oregon, just the way they're playing complete team football, no one of these guys is in like a offensive player of the year or Heisman candidate, campaign that they have, but it's all coming to that point you made, Ross, too, where we're going to see the draft stock of a lot of guys rise based on their performance in the college football playoff being expanded. And I can't wait. And you know what I could wait for is the NBA play-in tournament, which is just around the corner here, the mid-season tournament, I should say, which just, missed me with that. I forgot completely about that. It doesn't make me want to watch the Chicago Bulls anymore or any of these other teams. Talk about injuries. The big names have all been out, whether it be, Jokic with his mystery personal injury, personal reasons, injury, Kevin Durant being out for extended time. We just saw Luka going out for some time as well. It's still a bit early. And then, of course, the Iron Man, LeBron James, putting up triple doubles left and right, and the Lakers looking to hit on Dalton Connect and just, doing Laker things at this point. But the Bulls, circling back to the Chicago standpoint, they, look as advertised. And we were joking in the pre-show about Richard Jefferson saying that they will just never be back at this point. And it kind of feels that way with a roster like this, with Josh Giddey and Levine and, Matas Buzelis. And it just feels like they, for whatever reason, can't attract a superstar or just can't get to that sort of upper echelon of the Bucks or the Celtics in your own, conference, let alone the league. And it sucks being a Bulls fan. It sucks being a Chicago sports fan in general, but what else can you say about the Bulls at this point early in the season? They're pretty unwatchable.
Yeah, you can't try and toe the line of mediocrity for 6, 7, close to 10 years. You got to pick a lane.
And I'm not paying $30 a month to fucking watch them.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully I have DirecTV, or else same thing. I wouldn't pay for it as well. We already get the channel, but you have to pick a lane. You've got to grow a set of balls and say, listen, we're either going to be all in and spend the money that we need and go get the guys that we need to get, or we're going to strip this thing down to the studs and sell off as many pieces as possible and accumulate some draft picks and try and go that route like the Oklahoma City Thunder did. Oklahoma City Thunder are the best team in the draft. They are the best team in the NBA right now. They built that team entirely through the draft, right? And then they made some key trades down the stretch. And I think that's what the Bulls need to do. Is you've got some guys right now who are playing fairly well. Vucevic is playing well. So is Zach LaVine. I think those are two guys that can help some franchises closer to the trade deadline. You've got to find a way to move those guys and just be flat out terrible. There's a young man right now in Duke. His name is Cooper Flagg. He's 6'9". He's 245 pounds. He can shoot. He can pass. He can dribble. He can do everything that you want. And how you're not trying to throw your hat in the ring to get a guy like that is beyond me. You whiffed on trying to get a guy like Victor Wembanyama because you wanted to go for the play-in tournament. Get the fuck out of here. Like it's okay. Bulls fans we've endured long enough. I am a 43-year-old Bulls fan. Yes, I remember the golden age of Michael Jordan. I remember every single championship. But I was also there for the Eddie Curry days, and the Eddie Robinson days, and the Marcus Fizer days, and all the other shitty days that came along with it. And I was there for the try-hard Bulls and Kirk Heinrich. And obviously when we finally got Derek and then things got lean after that, I was there for the Alpha Bulls, like the Rondo era and Dwayne Wade. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like we will still be there. And actually, we would have more respect for this franchise if you just say, you know what, fuck it. We're going to strip it down. We're going to play a bunch of G League kids, and we're going to try and build this thing up through the draft. It might take 5 years, but damn it, that's the way we're going to do it. And that's the way you should do it, because what you're doing right now, and this is all going back to Jerry Reinsdorf, who's just the worst man in Chicago. It's just a slap in the face to your fans in two separate franchises. I'm also a White Sox fan, which is equally as brutal.
It's brutal right now. They just can't even lose right at this point, or can't tank correctly when you're always middle of the road type of team and just clutching onto that and picking 8th or 7th or 9th overall. You're not going to get that transcendent talent to change the franchise, and it's just the same story. So we just look forward to them in another play-in tournament, Ross, at this point in time. Let's go to some other quick hits at this point. Are you catching Gladiator 2 next week with the sort of, shortened week, as it were, with the holiday?
Yeah, absolutely. Next week's a big week, right? Because you get Gladiator 2, you get Wicked, and I think there's another Moana 2. That's the other big release.
That's my double feature, baby. I take
absolutely.
Take Moana 2, then Gladiator.
Listen, the first Moana, fire soundtrack. Just absolutely amazing soundtrack. But yes, I am excited for Gladiator 2. Obviously, as a huge Denzel fan, Denzel Washington historian, it's a big moment for him. I've enjoyed the press tour that he's on. He's really going for it. I think he's trying to go for another Oscar win, as he deserves. That man should already have 2 or 3 Oscars on his mantle. I'm excited for the movie. I'm excited that Ridley Scott, who's like in his 80s, is still making movies, and we'll see what a guy like Paul Mescal has to do. That he's kind of like that next up guy that in that next group of young stars, and we've seen what a guy like Timothée Chalamet can do with Dune, and how that catapulted him to a major star. So let's see what Mescal can do, because I was watching the original the other day, just rewatching it again. It was on TV, and Russell Crowe is just absolutely breathtaking on the screen. And him opposite Joaquin Phoenix
His best
was absolutely awesome, right? So if you can hold your own against a guy like Denzel Washington on the screen, then all of a sudden you've got true star potential, and it'd be nice to see that as from some of our young actors right now.
I know that, and we harp on this being the age of CGI, and there's going to be a hint of that too with riding rhinos.
There's going to be a lot of it.
Yeah, sure. You get a touch of that because it's just the standard, as it were. But I saw in the press, or I should say on the red carpet, Pedro Pascal talking about getting asked the question why you should see it, namely them and it being Gladiator 2, but also being a Ridley Scott movie. And you talked about the age of Ridley Scott. Like, we're still seeing these directors churning out movies like Scorsese and Ridley Scott and Coppola. And Ridley Scott knows how to put an epic out there. I mean, you could say what you want about Napoleon, the Napoleon movie he did, but
House of Gucci,
House of Gucci, exactly. But now this has been a long time coming to sort of have a follow-up, and now you have the cast in place to really turn some heads, and Denzel getting in there as he also came out in the last week or two saying he's going to get in the Marvel universe as well. But him being in the Gladiator 2 with this host of other younger great actors, up and coming actors, is pretty great, and a household name, Pedro Pascal. I'm looking forward to it. I'm psyched.
Yeah. Clint Eastwood has a movie coming out on Max in like 3 weeks. He's like 94 years old. These boomers, boy, they don't know how to fucking let go. These boomers will hold on to their jobs, and God bless them for as long as they can. These old guys will continue to churn out some movies. I know Scorsese said that he might be done making full-length features because it's exhausting, but I would love to see him make one more, obviously, because he's Martin freaking Scorsese, and Killers Out of Flower Moon was a masterpiece. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. I'm going to watch Juror number 2 from Clint Eastwood, who comes out on Max in a couple of weeks, because why the fuck now? What else am I going to do on a December 15th on a Friday night? So,
got some names in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got some fun movies coming up. I watched Heretic in the theaters a couple of weeks ago, the Hugh Grant kind of horror movie. Speaking of an old guy still firing on all cylinders, Hugh Grant. So there's some fun movies out right now. There's some fun movies on the way. One thing about Wicked, though, this is Wicked Part 1. They're doing 2 of these. 2 hours and 47 minutes for a Wicked movie is just absolutely absurd. I'm sorry.
That's a stretch.
That is absolutely absurd. What are we doing here? Why does Part 1 of a movie need to be 2 hours and 47 minutes long? This is the guy that always says make a movie 3 hours long, but I'm not watching Wicked for damn near 3 hours. I'm not.
Not that. No chance. All right, we'll get out of here on this, Ross. Bears predictions against the Vikings, looking to break that 4-game skid. I will say they lose 21-17 to the Vikings. Defense puts them in a position, but they come up short.
Got the Bears covering the 3.5, but they're still going to lose 23-20 Vikings.
Look at that. The losers, even the losers don't get lucky sometimes. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two, share. Remember on Spotify, iTunes as well for the audio-only versions. Follow me at The Real Evan Mack. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. For now, we say that was a nice slam of the glass, Ross.
Yeah.
For now, we say deuces. Everybody be good to each other out there. So long.
Peace.